Okay, this is the big show. Thank you all for filling in. Although if you really wanted to be where the action was, you would have been at our happy hour yesterday. That's really where people were. I know it's late in the afternoon, but we have some great information to share. And I'm Josh Metz with Monterey Bay DART. We're an innovation ecosystem centered in the Monterey area. And we have bring together companies, government, and education providers to support their growth and success here in California. And I'm going to talk about our vision, which is a resilient future with an inclusive workforce and advanced infrastructure to support the growth of these companies, drones and aerospace in particular. We organized the drone pavilion here at FIRA. This is our second year doing that. And we see a strong growth path for especially lately the ag spray drone segment. And you see some great stuff over there with the Guardian Ag drone and what AgB is doing service-wise in the state. We know there are opportunities and challenges there that have to do with workforce and regulation and all of that. So we're engaged in those conversations with our government partners. But we also touch on, along with ag, issues around mobility and security. And so we see the common core of engineering talent and entrepreneurship expertise is what's going to help those companies grow here and also help the employees be resilient in the face of change. So we really work to support the growth of the good fit, climate smart businesses here in California. We provide a variety of services in that area. Our programs really focus on workforce development, the critical infrastructure, and innovation, entrepreneurship, education, and policy advocacy. We've been around for almost 8 years, and we grew out of the largest military base reuse project here in the country, that redevelopment of Fort Ord, which used to be the West Coast Infantry Training Site for the U.S. Army, closed in 1994, and now is the center of the CSU Monterey Bay campus, as well as UC Santa Cruz's Monterey Bay Education, Science, and Technology Center Dreams. We have been on a path that began in the pursuit of a FAA drone integration test site back in 2017. We've made multiple pitches on federal grants, all of which are still looking for a win, but we've continued on with that, including recently participating in NSF Regional Innovation Engine grant proposals and others. But along the way, we have made a great connection with our friends at the Irvine Foundation here in California. They're a large philanthropy that's helping create pathways of opportunity for our underserved communities. And so that's been really where we have found some great traction in working with one of our unicorn startups in the Monterey Bay area that you might have seen on Good Morning America today, Joby Aviation, which is created an electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft that's going to revolutionize transportation. Why we're here at the AgTech arena, largely because this project, FIRA, came to Salinas last year, and since we're the drone people, they asked us to organize this drone pavilion. So what that means, and if you haven't been there, there's a drone pavilion here. It's in Exhibition Zone 2, and you'll come through and be able to see some really leading edge companies that are working in that space. So our job is to bring that all together along with our partners from HawkTower and the Reservoir, who are really, if you were in the media or in the press conference this morning, or any of the other places that Danny and his team have been, you will have heard some of that story, but you'll get more of it here. And yeah, so we're just glad to be part of the emerging tech ecosystem and helping push forward the continued growth of those sectors here in California. These are a bunch of our partners, and they continue to grow. We're a nonprofit organization, so I don't know if I mentioned that before, but doesn't mean we don't make money. It's just that we reinvest all our money in our programs so that continues to yield the public interest benefits that we're created for. These are the arenas that we work in, and we look forward to more partnerships. As I mentioned, these are some of the services that we provide, really innovative workforce programs. We've established new apprenticeships that have helped train ag workers and hospitality workers to do composite layup and advanced electric motor maintenance and installation. We pursue projects in infrastructure, and really for the aviation space, this is a big deal, especially for drone operations. As you might know, the flying of large aircraft is well established, managed by the FAA and the National Airspace System, but low elevation aircraft need significant infrastructure to improve the resolution and the safety of the airspace management. So we're working on a number of paths with our local, state, and federal partners to improve that here in California, particularly on the Central Coast, so that we can remain at the leading edge of the evolution of these tools in agriculture. If you don't know, the Wilbur Ellis Company, which is a national ag service provider, they're building their ag spray drone teams in Salinas for a reason, because we have people and land access for them to be able to develop and test those platforms. And then thirdly, we provide access to capital to a variety of public, private, and philanthropic sources. So if you're a startup looking for a home that welcomes you and will help you get access to funding for certain programs, think about Monterey. We offer a variety of products in the recent years, including a feasibility study that was recently completed. You know, you've heard from Gabe Yahtzee and the folks at UCA&R. They have a team there led by a guy named Lon Hatamiya, who's done a number of these feasibility studies, including here for the plant, the product down in Escondido. Well, he worked with us to complete this one here too. So we see, and we're working with our community colleges to advance this vision. Also, the Advanced Manufacturing Apprenticeship Pilot that we have completed with the support of Irvine's funding and a partnership with Joby Aviation really talks about the role that working with community-based organizations on workforce development programs can have in supporting the growth of companies where your workforce may be limited, may not have the expertise exactly that you're looking for, but by strengthening those relationships with your community-based organizations, you can see really amazing outcomes both for the community benefit and for the companies that are located there. And then thirdly, just recently we've released an emerging technology workforce skills demand study, which is really trying to point the picture both for workforce developers like our community colleges, as well as entrepreneurs who may be looking to solve problems of what the skills demand for agriculture, infrastructure, construction, and aerospace technology companies are in the Monterey area in particular. Some of the outcomes include supporting the securing of over $10 million in a Cal Competes award for our expanding companies in Monterey. Over $3.5 million recently invested in by the Irvine Foundation in this workforce development arena, and our annual drone camp that's put on in partnership with UCA&R and many other partners in Monterey. And of course, bringing together the drone pavilion, which is a thing that's happening right here, and hosted the great happy hour yesterday. So this wonderful artwork has been done by Danny's teammate, Grace Wodicki. Wodecki right here. She is. Yeah. Everybody loves this artwork, and so I think we've been talking about how we might, offer the posters for sale for, lots of money. So, anyhow, amazing work, and it's been a real pleasure getting to know Danny and his team and watching their progress as they have developed and refined their thesis in investing in innovative startups in rural and agricultural communities. You're going to hear a lot more about that. But I can say, as somebody who's been involved in economic development and kind of driving this emerging tech idea in our region for several years, to have renewed energy and vision and delivery on the vision gives us hope, because I think the timing of this project and this work is just ideally positioned. I think you're going to see, both from the Central Coast and in the Central Valley, the outcomes of this are going to yield benefits for startups and for our key economic sectors for years to come. So I think, Danny, with that as a setup, I might just invite you to come up and say a few more words about Hawk Tower and the reservoir.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. So my name is Danny Bernstein. I'm just going to talk a little bit about this, and if you have any questions at the end, please let us know. So less than 1% of California's venture capital goes to rural regions of the state. If you remove Santa Cruz and Santa Barbara, it's 0.24% of California's venture capital goes to rural regions. But then if you take a map of California and you look at where the natural resources are and where the natural resources imperatives are and where our population's actually growing, there's an inverse. And so we exist to kind of help address that inverse. And also, we see that there are significant natural resource opportunities and imperatives throughout the state, and that we could be applying more technology to those imperatives. To complement our fund, which is an early stage venture capital fund, we are in the process of incubating an incubator, which is called the Reservoir. And these are nonprofit incubators. Similarly, if you look at where on a map of California do we have startup incubators and accelerators, there are over 20 incubators, for example, or accelerators in Berkeley, in the city of Berkeley, over 20. And I don't think there are 20 in all of rural California. So it just kind of gives you a sense of the nature of our innovation imperatives, our rural innovation imperatives, and our climate innovation imperatives, for example, and then where the technology is actually occurring. And very often where the technology is occurring, that's where the IP is held, and where the IP is held, that's where wealth is created. So we are really, really obsessed with this sort of virtuous cycle, and we want to be studying it. So our first project out of the reservoir is something we talked about in more detail today. It's called the Reservoir Farms. And there are over 7,000 startup incubators in the world. It's a lot. However, none of them combine robotics and a farm on the same place. So that's our idea, is create a space where you can work on AgTech projects on a working farm. How we came up with this idea is we spoke to over 50 companies, and we just wanted to understand how do they do R&D. And it was kind of a mystery to me, because I spent 20 years in Silicon Valley. I didn't really understand how AgTech projects were built, because I live right next to the Salinas Valley, and I don't see any maker spaces. So I was really confused by this. And some of them are there. They're kind of shops, and they're sort of hidden, but there weren't any incubators. And then I heard that there was one incubator, but then it was an office space. It didn't actually have access to a farm, nor did it have access to a lab or access to a maker space. So we kind of really deeply understood this, and we came up with this idea, which was a working makerspace robotics incubator that's farm side. We're launching 2. We're cutting ribbons in Q1 of next year. And here are some of the specific characteristics. I've mentioned this fact a couple of times. We will provide access to world-class soil. So you come to FIRA, and there's this amazing test plot facility out there. I actually have not been able to go yet because I've been busy, but I will eventually go and see it. And they, they set it all up just for these few days, and they actually pull it all down. It's kind of sad. But what if you had that sort of test plot capability, and it was 365, 24/7? So that's something that we're doing. And it's actually the same people, which is Western growers, are going to be working with us to plant at Reservoir Farms. We will also have access to Western growers to do case studies and certifications of AgTech, because right now there's actually very little trust between AgTech startups and growers. There's a lot of failed promises of what products actually do. We've talked about shops, and then we also want to provide like a classic incubator access to mentorship, customers, investors, lawyers, those sorts of things. A big part of our strategy is to integrate workforce development from the outset. So when we announced the project today, we actually had Hartnell College and Merced College in the press conference with us. We are in this transition state around agriculture, where ag jobs will become ag tech jobs, and there's actually going to be a 30% increase in ag jobs in the next 5 years. And the growth is going to come from equipment operation, big data, cloud, things like that. So ag is becoming ag tech. That's inevitable. Really, the opportunity is, where does that agricultural technology originate? Are we buying it from China, or are we building it closer to where the production is actually occurring? And if we can do that, if we can spur rural innovation with AgTech, then we can have IP ownership in rural California and in rural regions of America. And that's a big deal, because where the innovation happens is where the IP is held, and that's where wealth comes from. That's where wealth creation comes from, and that's the opportunity. So these are a couple of mock-ups that Grace put together. I call her Grace GPT. And it's a joke. And so Grace has started to kind of put together this vista view of what the Reservoir Farms will look like. As I said, we're cutting ribbons in Q1. This is a vista of Salinas Valley, and you can see kind of this these integrated robotics. These are rovers, the warehouse, which I'll take you inside of in a second, and then some of the kind of the village, which is over here, and I'll show you what that looks like. This is the inside of the warehouse. We will have 12 private maker spaces that will allow startups to be able to build, and they'll be able to do it in private if they choose, or they can pull down the blinds and they can be out in the open if they'd like as well. We like to joke that we can optimize for the paranoid introverted roboticist as well as the trusting extroverted roboticist, and we'll be able to support both. We'll also have this kind of village concept. So we've been referring to the Reservoir Farms as the Olympic Village of AgTech. And the idea behind that is that we want to create a real community feeling around innovation, which you see in places like downtown San Francisco or downtown Palo Alto, and don't exist as much. And that's why we love FIRA, right? We come here and it really feels like this sort of startup village, this technology village, this innovation village, but we don't really have it in the day-to-day of agricultural technology. And that's a really big opportunity. So what we'll do is we'll take these modified shipping containers and we'll use them for hospitality, for office space, for storage. We're actually working with, there's a lot of people who are into modified shipping containers or also go to Burning Man. So we are working with the Burning Man community to actually utilize some of the most sustainable and kind of like reusable, recycle-friendly, et cetera, shipping container technologies that are out there. And we will be bringing them in for office space, for hospitality, for things like that. So that is the story. We're cutting ribbons in Q1. We're now in the process of talking to startups about what we're doing and talking to projects and getting ideas. I met a gentleman from Turkey today who has an ag tech startup, and he says, I've been trying to figure out where I should put my ag tech startup in California. When can I sign up? That's a great example. And so that's why we call it the Olympic Village, is we want to start to hear lots of interesting accents coming through rural California. And so that's one idea, is that we can make this a home for international companies that want to plop down and start to access our market. We also want to see research projects happen. We're working with the University of California. And then also ag tech startups. So they're pre-seed, seed, Series A, and that right now are spending 40 or 50 grand a month on access to a shop, access to a field, access to storage, and all these different things. We want to undercut that significantly and be able to offer much more cost-effective solutions for R&D. And that is our thing, right, Josh?
Awesome.
Oh, hold on.
We have about 5 minutes. It's actually a minute left of the 20-minute time, but if you guys want to take the full 10-minute floor, for the floor for 10 minutes, you're more than welcome to have it for Q&A.
Well, we'll take all that, but before we get there, I just wanted to put this up to let you all know that we do have an annual conference that, well, it's mostly annual, and it will be happening in the end of March in Monterey, and you'll be able to come and see lots of the things we're talking about, and hear about our focus areas in mobility, security, and the environment. So we bring together these different communities at this conference, and you'll be able to see and hear some of these air mobility platforms that are being built right there. And so we invite you to put a note in your calendar and think about joining us there in March. And that was the main point, and I think now we can take any questions that you might have.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am really excited about your vision for the incubator space, and I'm wondering if there's any thoughts about also how you're going to work with farmers, because I think that there is a huge lack of trust right now with farmers. You know, these ag tech companies are saying that they have all of these solutions, but we're like, are they really ready to roll out in the field, where, you know, how much of this is hyperbole? So is there a vision for like training or outreach to farmers? Because me as a farmer, I'm like, I want to know. I want all the data that's coming out of this.
Totally. That's a great question. So a couple different layers. One is we've begun to talk, like, I don't know if you saw on that slide, but we have the Monterey County Farm Bureau and the Merced County Farm Bureau, and they want to start to communicate about what we're doing into their newsletters, things like that. So, you know, at a basic level, communication. The other is that these are going to be open facilities. So, you know, we want to design them in such a way that people can drive up and just walk around. And we will hold events there on a regular basis. We're talking about working with, like, doing connect events, monthly happy hours, things like that. And then with our partners like Western Growers to start to publish case studies and just create a lot more transparency. So that's the goal. That's part of why we're doing this, not in Palo Alto or like San Francisco, but we're doing it in Salinas and Merced to start. I don't know, where are you based? You're based in Texas? Great, yeah. There's a direct flight between Dallas and Monterey. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think and then we're really open to this, scaling this idea. I think one of the things that doing this as a nonprofit is that it's not proprietary. So, you know, someone said to me today, well, like, can I do this in New Zealand? Are you going to eventually expand there? I'm like, if you pay for my flight and my wife and children, then maybe, you know, but absent that, this is a nonprofit. So we're actually really open to sharing what we've learned. I wouldn't say somebody should copy it yet because it may not be the right thing to copy. But once we learn it, we're going to start to publish case studies, things like that. So then, you know, there could be look, are you in Center Texas, Western, Eastern? Just outside Austin. So I think you can imagine this being an extension of the Austin innovation ecosystem, or, you know, the Pittsburgh innovation ecosystem with Carnegie Mellon, all those different things. So I don't think this is a proprietary idea. I think this is going to make ag tech more investable generally, and one of the 4 or 5 stated goals is to, I think you saw on that slide, is to restore trust or build trust between ag tech and growers.
Thank you for the presentation. What is the planned acreage footprint for reservoir farms, specifically for the farming plots?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in all like total on a farm, we think it's about above 50 acres. And then the individual startups will be able to reserve and really kind of like plan ahead. So like imagine you're coming and you're saying, listen, I'm doing something with onions. Let's say, great, well, what kind of onions, what crop width do you need, et cetera? And they'll say, great, we'll have that ready in this amount of time. And so it'll be kind of like a reservation system in that sense. And so based on the kind of membership that you put into with us, we can give you access to certain amounts or, you know, different crops, different widths, et cetera. Not so different from how FIRA is done, which is that, you know, if let's say Bonsai is doing a couple of, you know, demos, then they'll talk to, you know, Western Growers and say, this is the kind of thing I want to do my demos on. We're taking a lot of that same principle, but we're applying more of an evergreen approach. So this will be something that's more 24/7, 365. But yeah, the farms themselves are above 50 acres. Great, well, thanks so much, everybody, and thank you to DART for this collaboration. We appreciate it.
Awesome.